So we're going to try something brand new on Facebook Live. We're going to do a weekend preview looking ahead to the big races taking place either today or Sunday. And we're slowly but surely now edging into the National Hunt season, and all the focus this weekend's on Wincanton, Badger Ales Day. Ben, you're going to look through the action for us.
Yeah, we've got, I think, four races are going to be on ITV from Wincanton. There's some really interesting races, actually. I mean, it's elite hurdle. We'll get onto this later properly, but it's one of the most interesting elite hurdles I've seen in a long time. I think it can be quite a small field, can't it, sometimes, and it can be 3 Nichols runners and something else, and Henderson and 5 runner race or something. But we've got 7, but I think nearly all of them have got some sort of chance. It's a really interesting race, both in terms of betting and watching. But yeah, we'll start off. The 150 is the first one that's going to be on ITV. It's a mare's handicap hurdle, and it's another really interesting race. We've got a number of them that contested the EBF mare's final the back end of last season. That is probably the race to focus on, really. Snow Leopardess won it that day. She looks a nice sort of prospect for this season. She's already been over to France and won a race. She hasn't ran domestically since that, but she's definitely interesting. So I think the form is solid. And Copper K was the one that finished best of those that contested that race that are in this race. You also had Tara View, who was 4th. Wizard Sleeb, the excellently named Wizard Sleeb, was 7th. And possibly the most intriguing one is this Le Manva Odyssey, who was running well, was well backed for the race. She was making her handicap debut for Harry Fry that day. She was going really well. She was sent off 8-1, backed in from double figures. Everything looked to be going fine for her. And then 3 out, she basically approached the flight and just said, no, I'm all right, thanks, and decided not to jump it very well at all. She essentially refused, shaped to run out. She did actually get over it eventually, and then she ran on, but all her chance had gone by then. She lost many, many lengths and a lot of momentum. So she's clearly not the most straightforward, but at the same time, she was going well. She was probably going to finish within the first 4, I'd say, if not the 3 or the 2. She was running really well, and obviously they expected a big run based on the market. So, I mean, she's available at double figures for this race, or was put in, at least when I looked at the odds half an hour ago. She was 12s and 10s with most places. That could be a bit big. That's factored in, I think, the fact that she might be a bit quirky. A double figure price, given that she was going to run so well, I think is factored in. But if she gets any shorter, then if she's sort of 6-1 or something like that, then you might think, hang on a minute, she did show a fair bit of quirkiness that day. They've put a tongue strap on her. I don't know whether that might calm her down or make her a bit more straightforward, or I don't know. But I think she is interesting. That would be the one I'd probably look to back if I was having a bet at double figures. That would be an interesting bet to have, I think. The other one to mention, obviously, there's a couple more that didn't run in that race that are interesting. One is the Organist, who had to go chasing last season, having been a listed hurdle winner the previous year. Now she didn't really take to chasing that well. She's not the biggest compared to some of these mares that she was running against, and she never really matched her form from that listed win in 3 tries over fences. They brought her back over hurdles in the last start of the season, and she ran well. She probably finished with a bit more to give, basically, after being hampered in 4th. That was at Cheltenham. So I think obviously they're sensibly, I think they've given her a go over fences, and it's not really worked. So they're going to give her a campaign over hurdles by the looks of this. So she's interesting. She's probably on quite an interesting mark, 135. I think she's favourite though. She's 6-1.
Yeah, joint with Secret Door at the moment.
Yeah, and Secret Door is the other one that you'd have to mention. Obviously, she ran quite well, respectably enough, at Uttoxeter behind No Hasselhoff. That was against the Geldings. She's coming back against mares. She's got James Bowen taking over, and she did lose a shoe that day as well. So she had an excuse to why she was a little bit further back than maybe the market expected, because she was 11-4 that day. She was well supported. She'd beaten about 10 lengths, but I think she, you can read into that what you want really, but it can affect them. I think losing a shoe, it's not ideal, is it? So she's another player. It's a really interesting race, and one that's probably going to work out quite well. We've also got like Ellen's Way, who's completely unexposed, making handicap debut today. I say at the prices, if you can get double figures about Le Mans Odyssey, I think she'll run a race, whether she's quirky, whether she ducks out again or something. That's almost factored into the price, given her talent. I think double figures, you can give her a chance. You can give her one more chance. So that would be my pick if you can get double figures, Le Mans Odyssey in that one. But I do fear the Organist and Secret Door. They're solid enough at the top of the market. It would just be a bet more on it from a price perspective, really.
Okay, so Le Mans, I can't pronounce that. Le Mans Odyssey might be the one with the value in the first.
Yeah.
And on to the second race, and we've not really got a lot of runners to choose from here, but interesting nonetheless, this Grade 2 Novices Chase. Modus and Calondra, it looks like a match race potentially. We saw Modus at Bangor a couple of weeks ago on Timeform Day.
Yeah.
Quirky, probably needs a bigger field than this moving forward, but is he talented enough? He's rated higher than Calondra over hurdles.
Yeah. Calondra and Modus are quite similar. I think both of them have been seen to good effect being held out right at the back in big fields, and really been seen to good effect coming through late, having travelled strongly. So, I mean, obviously both of them were classy enough to win in small field scenarios on their chasing debuts. Calondra won well enough, as you liked, justifying odds of 5-4 on, so it wasn't a brilliant race. And Modus, again, it wasn't a deep race, that was it, when we were at Bangor a couple of weeks ago, but he did it well enough. They're both open to improvement, they're both interesting, but I can't help but think that we might see the best of them, the very best of them, when they're put in handicaps or a bigger field than this anyway. But as it stands, Valhalla, who's had 3 chasing starts, just looks to have a fair bit to find with those two, I think. Unless they really compromise their chances and end up pulling or something like that, then that's the only way you can see Valhalla winning, really, because he is essentially just inferior in terms of what the other two have achieved. A fairly interesting little race, but again, like I say, I think both of them, whatever they do in this race, Calondra and Modus, I think they'll be they're seen to best effect when they're in a bigger field with an end-to-end gallop rather than pottering around with 3 runners in the race. Okay,
so we'll leave that one best watch.
I wouldn't have a bet in this race. I suspect Paul Nicholls has got such a good record in the race. I think he's won 3 of the last 4. Won it with Frodon last year, who obviously won a boatload of races after. I suspect Modus will probably win, but it's not a betting race.
No, okay. One that looks like it could be a betting race though is the Elite Hurdle, and there's plenty of interest in that. I was looking at this earlier and I couldn't find the headline name in here. The one that really caught my eye was Charbel, considering how excellent a novice chasing term he had last season, racing off 149 as well, I think, as well tomorrow.
Yeah, he is. Yeah.
What's the angle here?
It's one that you could easily sort of form an opinion on a number of them. Charbel was obviously behind Altior a couple of times last season, was second behind him in the Henry VIII at the Sandown, and then was probably going to finish second again in the Arkle, but for falling, I think 2 out it was that day. And obviously he's improved for fences, and he was a really good chaser, but you can't forget that he was 5th in the Supreme as well the season prior to that over hurdles, and that was an excellent renewal, obviously one of the strongest ones that we've seen in recent times, I think, with Altior winning it, Min in second, and then Bouvardere, the champion hurler, in third, and he was back in 5th. So it's really good form, that particular. If you cherry pick the best of the form in this race, that's probably it, and that's why he's got top weight, obviously. But so yeah, I think he's a definite contender. Going down the list, you've got Coeur de Lion, who may not be as classy as some of these, but he has improved on the flat over the summer. He was second in the Cesarewitz trial at Newmarket on his penultimate start, so he's a horse that's moving forward, and he might be able to better what he's done in this sphere so far. You wouldn't be surprised if he took another step forward. You've got Zubeya, who represents a yard with a good record in the race. Paul Nicholls has won 4 of the last 10 runnings. He only runs 1 this time around. So that might be a pointer for some people. He was second in the Scottish Champion Hurdle at the end of last season. He's £4 higher now. He'd probably be one that I might be able to discount, to be honest, if I was having a bet in the race. Because although I respect the yard and he's still a lightly raced type, I think he's probably had a few goes in handicaps, and this is a good race. You've got Flying Tiger again. He's interesting. He won the Fred Winter last year. The concern for him would be that was by far his best effort in Cheltenham, and he really seemed to benefit from being buried in a big field because he has pulled hard. He had Richard Johnson taking over for the first time that day, and that really helped him and it helped him settle. But then he ran again with Johnson on in an 8-runner race at Aintree, the anniversary hurdle, and pulled again. And so there were 7 runners here, unless they go really hard, which they might do, because we've got Lotderg Spirit who seems to be a nice sort of front runner who likes to get into things from the front. You'd have to be concerned about Flying Tiger, I think, just based on the field size and the tempo this is likely to be run at. Lotderg Spirit is currently favourite, I think. Is that right? It was near the top of the market.
7-2 at the moment.
Yeah, he looked really good at the start of last season. His jumping was absolutely electric when he won at Kempton, and I really thought he was going to be something very special, but he was just disappointed, really, based on the promise of that. He got beaten by Capitaine at Ascot in the Kennel Gate when he was sent off quite short, I think, and then he got sent up to Musselburgh in a race that is not one of the top races, shall we say. Obviously, he won well that day. He won justified odds of 7-4, but I think he's going to have to improve a bit to defy 137, but he's with an absolutely top yard, and he's only had a lightly raced campaigns to date, so he's going to improve. Melodic Rendezvous won the race in 2013, but he's been below that since. You can probably discount him. And then London Prize is the other one that I think is really interesting. He was progressive last season. Ended up winning the Imperial Cup at Sandown. He's £6 higher than that here, but again, the same point as with Coeur de Lion. It's the fact that he's gone onto the flat and he's improved again as a racehorse. He was second in the Cesarewitch behind Withhold, who was absolutely lobbed in. But for having a runner like that with absolute stones in hand in the race, he might well have won it another year. He's run an absolute screamer in second. So I think he's definitely interesting for Ian Williams, who continues to just be in really good form and just send out loads of winners. So I'd say I've not had a bet in the race yet, but I'd lean towards London Prize. I think he's getting a lot of weight off horses that have probably had a bit more racing than him in terms of the likes of. Definitely Zubeir. I think he's less exposed than Zubeir in this sphere. Charbel is the class act, but I'd just go for London Prize. I think if I was having a bet at the moment, I think he's about 5-1. He'd be I think of interest at that price. I think, but a really good race overall.
Cool. So London Prize, is that potentially a bit of value in the 5s? Do you think? Would you be tempted if it went any shorter? Would you?
Yeah, I mean, again, I wouldn't back him at 3-1 for this. I don't think, because it's such a good race. But I think he's got a decent chance, and I think 9-2, 5-1. If you back him at that sort of price, I think that's a decent bet in the race.
Okay, so one to go, the Badger Ales Handicap Trophy, a wide open handicap chase. This just over 3 miles. Plenty of really interesting types in here. When it comes to a handicap like this, do you like to look at the form straight up, or are you looking for something that's potentially slipped an attractive mark?
Yeah, I mainly have horses in mind for different races. Well, say that not specifically, but I've had the Arla Enki down as an interesting horse for all through last season. Basically, I know he raced 4 times over fences. He looked to chase a really sort of a chasing sort before that over hurdles. He ran well in the fixed brush. I think 2 renewals of the fixed brush at Haydock, which has now been canned as well, by the way. But that's another thing. So I think he was really interesting last season, and he just seemed to progress. I know there was a couple of stumbles along the way where he found himself racing too keenly on one or more occasion, but I think he's 2 from 4. The yard have really come to life the last couple of days. They had a winner and 2 seconds yesterday, and I think Sirot didn't run brilliantly today, but he's hardly one to gauge them by. I think they are coming back into form overall. I think being a front runner around here is definitely an advantage, provided he doesn't go mad on the front end. I think that's where you want to be around Wincanton, even though it's over a staying trip. I think being handy is definitely no bad thing. There's plenty of rain on the way as well, which is another thing that I haven't really touched on, which could impact some of the other races because we might get a few non-runners. But the rain is supposed to start early morning and it's not really supposed to stop. It's currently, I think, good to soft in places, but it might well be, soft heavy by this point in the afternoon. And I think that will count against Present Man, who's currently the favourite, I think, for this race. Is that right?
1, yeah.
And he was likeable last season in novices, and he won 4 times. He's an interesting runner if you just look at the face of that. He's a second season chaser. He had a nice tune-up last month when winning over hurdles, so he's clearly in good heart, but all his form is on a quicker surface, and it is going to be testing by this point. So I think if they run him, he's definitely one to take on. They might well pull him out, which would obviously be a shame if you're backing something else in the race because you've got a reason to take him on. So I'd be against him based on the ground. Southfield Royale is the other one, Nichols runner, that's quite prominent. He was going to win this race last year, but it was a much weaker renewal. I think there was only 6 or 7 runners in the end for this race because it was really fast ground. A lot of connections were put off, completely the opposite of what's happened this year. We've got a massive field, really good race, but last year it was a poor race, and he got put up in the weights for winning that. He's £3 higher, even though he obviously didn't win. He was going to win. He's £3 higher than that, and he seemed to have a problem after he ran his next start at Cheltenham. So he's been off nearly a year. I think he's got a little bit to prove for me in this. For all I definitely 100% respect the yard and definitely at this track because they do have so many winners here. But I would be overlooking him. I think Yala Enki's sort of the next in really. Fletcher's Flyer I think is definitely a runner. He's got a good record fresh. He won a big handicap at Punchestown a couple of seasons ago off a break, which I quite liked when I'm looking at him coming into this again off the back of a similar break. He caught my eye on the Reynoldstown. I thought he was a really interesting runner for the Irish national on the back of that because he travelled best in that race and just seemed to lack for a bit of fitness perhaps. It was a really eye-catching run, but then he ran in the Irish national, but he got caught up in making the run in up front, and he seemed to just that seemed to do for his chances really. So I do think he's interesting. I think he'll probably have the pace to go over an extended 3 miles because although you're talking about him as being a sort of national horse and he has won over 30 furlongs at Punchestown, I think he has got a bit of toe considering he's a stayer. I think he's interesting in general and probably for this race as well. Victor Tuzane's another runner that one won over at Carlisle on return for Venetia, and this is a much better race, but again you've got to probably respect him because he's unexposed over this sort of trip. So I think they're some of the main ones really. I think Mr. Mix, the other Nichols runner, would have his jumping thoroughly examined here because although it seemed okay last time, there's been a couple of occasions where it hasn't looked as fluid, and this is going to be a big test around here. They're going to go hard. The fences are fairly stiff, aren't they? So it's going to be a test of jumping. Overall, I'm going to back Yala Enki. That's my strongest one of the sort of of the ITV races at Wincanton. That's definitely my strongest bet. Hoping that he's sort of ready to rock because obviously he might need this. He might be getting tuned up for something else. That is always. You're always taking that in trust, aren't you, really? But the yards runners have come back to form in the last few days, and I think he's definitely the type to have a few more handicaps in and big handicaps at some stage during this season. So I'd say he'd be my best bet of the day, Yala Enki.
Okay, so Yellow Ink in the last, and I just can't help but feel for Richard Hoyles. I keep getting Southfield Theatre and Southfield Royale mixed up. It's a nightmare, isn't it?
It is, yeah. I've done that before. And
it's
written an article about one and mentioned the other or something like that. Yeah, it is. They've
both got similar profiles as well, which makes it even worse.
Yeah, quite lightly raced.
It's and Theatre and Royale as well, same sort of theme. You can be a royal at the theatre.
Definitely.
Anyway, cheers for that, Ben. And we'll no doubt have you back on in a few weeks.
Yeah, okay. Thanks.
Cool. Just look busy while I turn the screen on.